Okay, on to the cold start injector. The cold start injector just has two contacts, and this is just a magnetic winding in here. The wire goes in, makes a magnetic winding, and comes back out. When power is applied to either side of this is a 12-volt injector now, not to be confused with the injectors, which are the main injectors, which are 3-volt. But this is a 12-volt injector, full voltage of the battery. And you can test this injector by simply disconnecting the two screws which hold it to the chassis of the air plenum itself, pick it up, move it out to the side, and safely place a small can or something to catch the fuel. Take a wire and energize one side and simply ground the other side to anything safely away from the fuel itself, because it will arc, and it will begin to spray if you have fuel pressure present. Again, this is only if you've got your fuel pressure up. The only way you can do that would be to turn the key to on and push the airflow meter open, and that will pressurize it for a little bit. The pressure will bleed off in a few minutes, but you would still be able to test it. There are two different styles of these, a long and a short. The long one has the spray nozzle sprays backwards against the line and sits in this direction and sprays into the plenum. The short one sprays straight down in a cone shape. Both effective, both do the job. They can be used interchangeably. There's no particular difference in the length of their fitment or how they work. I'm not even quite sure why they made different ones. Either one does the job. That is located right here. And again, if you can see right here, see where the wire tabs are bent out? Rather than having to take and get a special tool to unloosen this, simply putting your thumb and pushing the wires out, the wire can be removed without, this connector can be removed without having to take and get a dental pick and pull these out. It's a real pain. Snaps right back on. That's why we like to bend those out. All right, the last part that really, the last sensor that really...
If the cold start valve tests good but slap battery power across it, but yet the thing still doesn't start when it's cold, what would be a cause of that? Is it like the cold start valve's not getting a signal from something else?
The signal to the cold start valve, as you'll see in your master fuel injection relay diagram, comes from there. And it gets that signal only during the cranking cycle. So when you're cranking, if you're testing this and you don't want to crank the motor while you're making this test, it will take an additional person to go over and turn the key to the on position, but the motor's going to crank. So just go to the other side of the motor and pull off the power wire to the solenoid that you can remove with just your fingers. And it's just a male-female spade connection, and that will render the starter inoperable until you get these tests made. One quick way of testing your fuel pump on this system is to take and simply disconnect the starter, as I just described, and then hold it in the crank position, and the pump should be heard to run. This is the bypass override circuit, and if you think about it in the way that it works, the diagram explains it pretty clearly.
So just real quick, the only time that the cold start valve works is when the starter is cranking? Or when you have the key in the start position?
The only time the cold start injector will fire is when it's cranking.
Okay. And
then only if it can find a ground in the thermal time switch. And the thermal time switch, this is the rule of thumb, and I've watched 1,000 times happen. A person jumps in and it doesn't have enough fuel pressure because fuel pump's tired. The thermal time switch kicks off because it is also getting a signal from the cranking side of the starter, which warms the bimetal strip and opens the circuit just as if it was warm, like it was on a warm day, to keep you from flooding the system. So if you crank longer than 5 to 8 seconds on the car and it doesn't start, your cold start injector has now been rendered inoperable, not because it isn't cold outside, but because you've cranked it too long. You're going to have to stop, shut the key off, and let it cool. Let the thermal time switch cool for 10 to 15 seconds and restart it again. And then it will take off and you will get another injection spray from the cold start injector. But if you just sit there and crank it, the only thing you're going to accomplish is run the battery down.
So being impatient doesn't pay.
No, and it's a safety circuit. They don't want you to flood it, because if you flooded it out and backfired, you would have a hell of an explosion in the plenum itself, and it would take the airflow boots off of it, not to mention the damage it would do to the airflow meter.